Have you ever wondered what happens when the person you look down on holds the keys to your entire world? In the bustling chaos of the world's busiest airport, one gate agent, fueled by bitterness and prejudice, decides to make an example of a quiet black woman flying in economy. She mocks her, questions her, and humiliates her in front of hundreds of people. What she doesn't know is that her victim isn't just another passenger. She's the silent new owner of the entire airline, and this gate agent just became the star exhibit in a real-life lesson on why you should treat every single person with respect. This isn't just a story about karma. It's a story about the devastating collision between petty power and ultimate authority. The air in Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport's Concourse E was a thick, chaotic soup. It was a symphony of the perpetually hurried, the frantic clicking of laptop keys, the rolling thunder of 1,000 carry-on suitcases, the distant, distorted calls for final boarding, and the overlapping, anxious chatter of travelers from every corner of the globe. The scent was a unique blend of Cinnabon stale coffee and jet fuel, the signature perfume of modern transit. Amidst this swirling vortex of humanity sat Dr. Seraphina Onyx, a portrait of serene stillness. To any casual observer, she was utterly unremarkable, and that was precisely by design. She wore a simple, well-worn pair of dark grey jeans, a soft heather grey hoodie from her alma mater MIT, and a pair of comfortable, nondescript sneakers. Her hair, a magnificent crown of tight, coily curls, was pulled back into a simple, low bun. No jewelry, save for a thin, unadorned silver band on her right ring finger, a gift from her grandmother. Her only luggage was a scuffed leather backpack that had seen more countries than most diplomats. Tucked inside it was a worn paperback copy of Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower, a first edition she treasured. She was booked in seat 28B on Stellara Air, Flight 718 to San Francisco. Middle seat, economy class. It was a ritual. Once a year, she made this pilgrimage not just to visit her grandmother, whose quiet wisdom was the bedrock of her life, but to remind herself of where she came from. It was an anchor to reality in a life that had become, by all objective measures, surreal. Just 3 days prior, Dr. Seraphina Onyx, through her multi-billion-dollar private equity firm, Nexus Innovations, had finalized the acquisition of Stellara Air. The deal was worth a staggering $6.8 billion. It had been executed in near total secrecy, a ghost transaction that wouldn't be announced to the public or the company's 50,000 employees for another 72 hours. Stellara, once a titan of the skies, was failing. It was bleeding money, plagued by logistical nightmares and hemorrhaging customer loyalty, due to a corporate culture that had curdled into apathy and, in many cases, outright hostility. Seraphina didn't buy failing companies to strip them for parts. She bought them to resurrect them. Her genius wasn't just in the algorithms she'd designed in her 20s that now powered global financial markets. It was in her profound understanding of systems, both human and digital. To fix a system, she believed you had to experience its failures from the ground up. You had to feel the friction, the frustration, the points where dignity was stripped away from both the customer and the employee. So here she sat, anonymous, observing. She watched the gate agents for her flight, a team of 2 women. One was younger, a woman named Chloe, with a nervous energy, who offered tired but genuine smiles to the passengers asking questions. The other was the lead agent, a woman in her late 40s, whose name tag read Brenda. Brenda Scanlon operated her domain, a small podium, and a stretch of worn carpet like a disgruntled queen ruling a miserable fiefdom. Her movements were sharp, her voice a blade. She didn't speak to passengers, she issued decrees. Every interaction was laced with a weary, accusatory sigh, as if each question was a personal affront to her existence. Seraphina watched her snap at an elderly man, who couldn't hear the announcement berate a young mother, whose toddler was crying, and roll her eyes so hard at a non-native English speaker that it was a miracle they didn't get stuck. Seraphina felt a familiar knot tighten in her stomach. This was it. This was the rot. It wasn't about fuel costs or fleet age. It was about Brenda. It was about a culture that allowed a Brenda to flourish, to wield her minuscule portion of power like a weapon against the very people who paid her salary. Now boarding Zone 4. Brenda's voice crackled over the PA system, dripping with disdain, as if Zone 4 passengers were a lower form of life. Zone 4 only. If you're not Zone 4, don't even think about it. We see you. Seraphina was in Zone 5, the final group. She was in no hurry. She continued to watch as the line formed. Brenda policed the queue with the zeal of a prison guard, sending people to the back with a flick of her wrist for minor infractions. She was a conductor of misery, and the gate area was her orchestra. Finally, the call came for Zone 5. Seraphina tucked her book into her backpack, slung it over her shoulder, and joined the last few passengers. The line moved slowly, each interaction at the podium, a small, tense drama. When it was her turn, she stepped forward and handed Brenda her phone, the QR code for her boarding pass displayed on the screen. Brenda didn't look at her. She snatched the phone, her painted-on eyebrows knitting together in theatrical concentration. She scanned the code. Beep. A green light flashed. Then she looked up, her eyes doing a slow, deliberate crawl over Seraphina, from her simple sneakers to her unadorned face, and finally to her hair. A smirk, faint but potent, played on her lips. Economy, huh? Brenda said, her voice loud enough for the people behind Seraphina to hear. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. Seraphina kept her own voice level and quiet. Yes. Brenda handed the phone back, but held on to the moment, her gaze unwavering. You know, she said, leaning forward conspiratorially, we offer upgrades. Though I'm not sure. She let the sentence hang. Her eyes flicking over Seraphina's simple hoodie again. The implication was clear, that you could afford it. This was the friction. This was the moment of impact. Seraphina felt a surge of cold fury, but her face remained a mask of placid neutrality. She was no longer just a passenger. She was a scientist, and this was the data she had come to collect. I am fine where I am, Seraphina said, her voice calm but firm. Brenda's smirk widened. She seemed to relish the quiet refusal, taking it as a challenge. Right. Well, have a nice flight. Try to enjoy it. Back there. She gestured vaguely toward the jet bridge, a dismissive wave. As Seraphina turned to walk away, she heard Brenda mutter to her colleague Chloe, in a stage whisper designed to be overheard. Can you believe some people, you'd think they'd at least try to look presentable when they travel? Seraphina didn't break her stride. She walked down the carpeted ramp, the muffled sounds of the terminal fading behind her. The fury inside her was no longer hot. It had cooled, hardened, and sharpened into a diamond point of absolute clarity. The problem with Stellara Air wasn't just its balance sheet or its aging fleet. The problem was a pervasive systemic decay of human decency, and she had just met its poster child. Brenda Scanlon had no idea who she was talking to, but she would. Oh, she would. In a way that would echo through every terminal, every break room, and every boardroom of the company she thought she served. Seraphina Onyx had come looking for the disease, and she had just stared it right in the face. The diagnosis was complete. The treatment was about to begin. Seraphina had taken 2 steps onto the jet bridge, when Brenda's voice, now amplified with a new aggressive authority, cut through the air. "Ma'am, I need you to come back here." "Ma'am." Seraphina stopped and turned slowly. Every passenger still in the gate area was now watching. The pre-flight tension had coalesced into a focused public spectacle. Brenda stood at the podium, arms crossed, a look of grim satisfaction on her face. Her junior colleague, Chloe, looked mortified, her eyes wide with apprehension. "Is there a problem?" Seraphina asked, her voice carrying easily back into the waiting area. "I'm not sure. There seems to be an irregularity with your ticket." Brenda announced, her tone suggesting she had uncovered a major criminal conspiracy. "I need to see your identification. A government-issued photo ID. This was a significant escalation. Boarding passes were linked to IDs at security, not typically rechecked at the gate unless there was a specific flagged issue. This was pure harassment, a power play designed to humiliate." Seraphina walked back to the podium, her steps measured and deliberate. She felt the weight of dozens of eyes on her. Some were curious, some impatient, a few sympathetic. She reached into her backpack, pulled out her wallet, and extracted her driver's license, placing it on the counter. Brenda picked it up with 2 fingers, as if it were contaminated. She stared at the name. Dr. Seraphina Onyx. She pronounced the name with mock reverence, drawing out the syllables. Then she looked from the photo to Seraphina's face, and back again. Her lips pursed in a caricature of scrutiny. "A doctor, are we?" "Brenda," said her voice, dripping with skepticism. "What are you, a doctor of spider's pottery?" A few nervous titters came from the remaining passengers. Seraphina's resolve hardened. She refused to be baited. "Computer science," she replied, her voice flat and devoid of emotion. "Right. A computer doctor," Brenda scoffed, turning the license over and over. "And this ticket was purchased today, last minute, with a debit card." She spoke the words debit card as if they were a confession of poverty. Flying across the country on a last-minute ticket. "Must be important. I'm visiting my grandmother, Seraphina," said the words, feeling sacred and private, now sullied by this public dissection. Your grandmother Brenda repeated, a cruel, knowing light in her eyes. That's what they all say. The accusation, vague but deeply insulting, hung in the air. She was implying Seraphina was a liar, a fraud, someone who didn't belong. The junior agent Chloe finally spoke up, her voice trembling slightly. "Brenda, the ticket scanned green. The system cleared it. We're going to delay the flight." Brenda shot her a venomous glare. "I'm the lead agent here, Chloe. I handle security concerns. And I am concerned." She turned her attention back to Seraphina. "The system can be wrong. People use stolen cards, fake ID, all the time." She was building a narrative for the audience, painting Seraphina as a potential criminal. Seraphina could feel the tide of opinion in the room, shifting from mild curiosity to suspicion. This is how it works, she thought. A person with a uniform and a title plants a seed of doubt, and prejudice does the rest. "My identification is valid," Seraphina stated. "My ticket is paid for. There is no issue, "That's for me to decide," Brenda snapped. She picked up the phone at the podium and began to dial, holding Seraphina's license hostage. "Yes, this is Brenda at Gate E14. I need a supervisor and possibly gate security. I have a passenger here whose documentation is questionable. Yes, potentially fraudulent." The words security and fraudulent electrified the air. People instinctively took a step back from Seraphina. She was now cordoned off by their fear and suspicion. Her face remained impassive, but inside a cold, precise anger was taking meticulous notes. She noted Brenda's exact phrasing, the fearful look on Chloe's face, the way the other passengers averted their eyes. This wasn't just an incident. It was a textbook case study in systemic failure. A man in a rumpled suit, clearly a frequent flyer with status, spoke up impatiently. "For God's sake, we're going to miss our connection." Her pass scanned. "Let's go." Brenda turned on him. "Sir, this is a matter of airline security. Would you prefer we just let anyone on the plane?" She gestured towards Seraphina, who stood silent and resolute. Before a supervisor could arrive, a young man standing near the back of the line raised his phone. He wasn't aggressive, just documenting. The small red light was on. Brenda saw it. "Are you recording me?" she shrieked, her voice cracking with fury. "That is illegal. You can't record airline personnel." It was a lie, of course. Airport gate areas are generally considered public spaces. The young man didn't flinch. "You're causing a public disturbance and harassing this woman. I'm documenting it." This new challenge seemed to break something in Brenda. All pretense of professional procedure vanished, replaced by raw, undisguised malice. She turned back to Seraphina, her face contorted. "You see, you're causing trouble. You're inciting other passengers," she accused. She took Seraphina's phone, which was still on the counter, and with a flick of her thumb, navigated back to the boarding pass. Then, in a moment of shocking theatricality, she looked Seraphina dead in the eye. "Your ticket," Brenda said, her voice low and vicious, "is cancelled." She tapped a sequence on her screen. An error message, red and angry, flashed on Seraphina's phone. Then, for her final act, she picked up the flimsy paper receipt the kiosk had printed a backup boarding pass and tore it in half, then in quarters, letting the pieces flutter onto the floor like toxic confetti. "You are denied boarding on Flight 7118. Brenda declared, her chest puffed with victory. "Security will now escort you out of the terminal." 2 airport police officers, summoned by Brenda's call, were now approaching, their expressions grim. The scene was complete. A black woman, dressed in simple clothes, was being accused, publicly shamed and expelled from the gate by a uniformed agent, her shredded boarding pass a symbol of her utter rejection. Seraphina looked at Brenda's triumphant face. She looked at the pieces of her ticket on the floor. She looked at the approaching officers. She felt no fear. The cold, clear part of her brain, the part that designed systems and analyzed failure points, was in complete control. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't plead. She gave Brenda one last, long, unblinking look. It was a look that contained none of the humiliation Brenda had intended to inflict. It was a look of assessment, a look of finality. Brenda Scanlon thought she had won. She thought she had successfully exercised her power to put someone she deemed unworthy in their place. She had no way of knowing that she hadn't just torn up a boarding pass, she had torn up her own life, and she had just handed her new boss all the evidence she would ever need. Seraphina turned calmly to the police officers. "There seems to have been a grave misunderstanding," she said, her voice steady and clear. "But I will cooperate fully." As they escorted her away from the gate, the whispers and stares of the other passengers followed her like a physical trail. She ignored them. Instead, she took out her phone not to rebook a flight, but to make a different kind of call. It was time to move from data collection to implementation. The experiment was over. The consequences were about to begin. Seraphina was not escorted to a holding cell or a dreary back office. The airport police officers, a man named Peterson, and his younger partner were professional, and once away from the charged atmosphere of the gate, seemed more confused than accusatory. They led her to a small, quiet administrative area reserved for airline management. "Ma'am, Officer Peterson," began, his tone respectful. "The gate agent alleged you were a security risk due to fraudulent documents." Seraphina sat in the sterile plastic chair, her posture radiating an unassailable calm. "My documents are not fraudulent. The agent, Ms. Scanlon, made a subjective and, I believe, discriminatory judgment. She cancelled my ticket without cause and publicly humiliated me. She didn't embellish. She stated the facts as clinically as if she were presenting a technical report." The officers exchanged a look. They had likely seen Brenda Scanlon in action before. "Do you have a number for someone at the airline we can call to verify this?" Peterson asked. "A customer service line, perhaps?" Seraphina allowed herself a small, mirthless smile. "I have a number," she said, "but it's not for customer service." She pulled out her phone. It was a sleek, custom-built device, its operating system one she had designed herself, impenetrable and untraceable. She scrolled through her contacts, a list that included senators, tech titans, and world leaders. She bypassed them all and stopped at a single name, Richard Sterling. Richard Sterling was the outgoing CEO of Stellara Air, a man who had spent 40 years at the company, climbing from baggage handler to the C-suite. He was currently on a golf course in Augusta, celebrating his impending retirement and the lucrative golden parachute that came with selling his beloved, albeit failing airline to the mysterious, unseen entity known as Nexus Innovations. He knew nothing of Seraphina Onyx, beyond her reputation as a reclusive, ruthless, and brilliant operator. They had never spoken directly. The entire multi-billion-dollar deal had been handled through their lawyers and investment bankers. She pressed the call button. 2,000 miles away, Sterling's phone buzzed in his golf bag. He grumbled, pulling it out, annoyed at the interruption. He saw an unknown number with a strange encrypted prefix. He almost ignored it, but a nagging instinct told him to answer. "This is Richard Sterling. Mr. Sterling." Seraphina's voice was cool and level. "My name is Seraphina Onyx. We haven't been formally introduced, but my company Nexus just purchased yours." The blood drained from Richard Sterling's face. He dropped his 9-iron. His golfing partners stared as he stumbled towards a bench, waving them away. "Ms. Onyx." "My God. Yes. Of course. Is everything all right with the transition?" "The wire transfers cleared, I was told. The finances are in order, Richard. The operations, however, are another matter entirely. I am calling you from an administrative office at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta Gate, E14. I have just been denied boarding on one of your flights." There was a long, stunned silence on the other end of the line. Sterling struggled to process the information. The new owner of his company, a billionaire, was calling him from an airport security office. It made no sense. "Denied boarding," he stammered. "There must be some mistake. A computer glitch." "There was no glitch," Seraphina said, her eyes fixed on the blank wall opposite her. "Your lead gate agent, a woman named Brenda Scanlon, decided she did not like the look of me. She accused me of having fraudulent identification, mocked my appearance, cancelled my valid ticket, and had me escorted away by police in front of several dozen passengers. Sterling felt a wave of nausea. This was not a problem. This was a catastrophe. A PR apocalypse wrapped in a corporate governance nightmare. I don't know what to say, he sputtered. That is unacceptable. Appalling. I will get on this immediately. I'll call the station manager. I will have that agent fired. I will have a private jet sent for you right away, Ms. Onyx. Whatever you want. What I want, Richard Seraphina cut in her voice, hardening almost imperceptibly, is for you to do nothing of the sort. Do not fire her. Do not send a jet. What I want is for you to listen very carefully. Back at gate E14, Brenda Scanlon was preening. Flight 718 had departed only 5 minutes late. She had faced down a troublemaker, upheld security standards, and put on a show of authority for her junior colleague. She was pouring herself a cup of coffee in the small break room when the station manager, a perpetually stressed man named Howard Fine, burst through the door, his face pale and slick with sweat. Brenda. What the hell did you do? He gasped, clutching his chest. Brenda was taken aback. What are you talking about, Howard? I handled a situation. A suspicious passenger. I denied boarding. It was textbook. 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 Howard's voice was a squeak of pure terror. I just got off the phone with corporate headquarters. No, not headquarters. I got a call from Richard Sterling's personal assistant. From his golf fucking course. Brenda. He was screaming. I've never heard him scream. Brenda's bravado began to falter. Mr. Sterling. Why would he care about a denied boarding in Atlanta? Because the passenger wasn't just a passenger. Howard yelled, his voice echoing in the small room. They wouldn't tell me who she is. They just said she's a Priority 1 VVIP, and that you personally have caused an incident of catastrophic magnitude. The color drained from Brenda's face. VVIP. That was a term reserved for royalty, for politicians, for the kind of people who shut down entire terminals when they traveled. But the woman, the hoodie, the jeans, the economy ticket, it was impossible. That's ridiculous, Brenda stammered, but the seed of doubt had been planted and was now sprouting into a tree of pure dread. She was nobody. She was... The phone on Howard's belt buzzed violently. He looked at the screen, his eyes widening in horror. It's him again. It's Sterling's office. He answered, his hand shaking. Yes, this is Howard Fine. Yes. Yes, I understand. Her name is Brenda Scanlon. Yes, she's right here. You want her to... What Howard listened, his face a mask of disbelief. He hung up the phone, his arm dropping to his side as if it no longer had bones. He looked at Brenda, and for the first time in their years of working together, she saw genuine fear in his eyes. Not fear of a delayed flight or an angry customer. This was existential, career-ending fear. They want you in the main conference room, he said, his voice a hoarse whisper. Right now. And they want me there with you. Why Brenda asked, her own voice barely audible. I don't know, Howard said, straightening his tie with trembling fingers. But the call came from the new owners. The deal wasn't supposed to be announced until Monday, but apparently things have changed. The new owners. The words hit Brenda like a physical blow. The mysterious firm that had bought the company. The one everyone was terrified of. Suddenly the image of Seraphina Onyx's face flashed in her mind. Not the face of a troublemaker, but the face she'd seen at the end, calm assessing final. The look of someone who wasn't being judged, but who was doing the judging. As Brenda and Howard walked in a silent, funereal procession towards the conference room, Seraphina was finishing her call with Richard Sterling. So to be clear, Richard, she was saying the announcement of the acquisition is to be moved up, effective immediately. An all-hands email is to be drafted. In that email, you will schedule an emergency board meeting for 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. It will be a video conference. I want every senior executive, every regional director, and the station manager and lead gate agent from Atlanta E14 on that call. Yes, Ms. Onyx, consider it done. Sterling breathed his retirement plans evaporating before his eyes. Good, Seraphina said. I'm on my way to my hotel now. I've booked a new flight for tomorrow afternoon. On a different airline, of course. She hung up. She looked at the two police officers who had been listening with a mixture of awe and terror. I believe Seraphina said, standing up and smoothing her hoodie, that this matter is now being handled at a level far above your pay grade. Thank you for your professionalism. She walked out of the office, leaving the two officers speechless. She strode through the concourse, the same anonymous woman in a grey hoodie. But everything had changed. The chaos of the airport no longer felt random. It felt like a system on the verge of a seismic shock. A cascade failure had been initiated not by a computer glitch, but by a single deliberate phone call. And it was all flowing directly towards one Brenda Scanlon, who was about to learn the first and most important rule of the new Stellara Air. The next morning, at precisely 8:00 a.m. Eastern Time, a grid of faces populated the giant screen in the main boardroom at Stellara Air's Dallas headquarters. There were the weathered, anxious faces of the old guard executives, men like Richard Sterling, who had thought they were cashing out. There were the ambitious, nervous faces of the regional directors from Chicago, Los Angeles, and Miami. And then in two small boxes at the bottom of the screen were the terrified, pale faces of Howard Fine and Brenda Scanlon, patched in from a sterile conference room in Atlanta. They had been up all night. The internal memo had landed like a bomb at 7 p.m. the previous evening. Nexus Innovations, the new owner. Effective immediately. An emergency meeting. The rumors had spread through the company like wildfire, fueled by whispers from the ATL ground crew about the incident at Gate E14. Brenda had cycled through every stage of grief denial, anger bargaining, and now a deep, soul-crushing depression. She sat rigidly in her chair, wearing her best blazer, the fabric feeling like a straitjacket. A new box appeared on the screen. It was labeled S. Onyx. For a moment, it was black. An electric silence held everyone captive. Then the video feed flickered to life. The woman who appeared was not the one Brenda remembered from the gate. The simple hoodie was gone, replaced by a sharp, minimalist black blazer over a silk shell. The simple bun was gone, her magnificent hair, now styled in a way that framed her face with an air of undeniable power. Her expression was not angry. It was far worse. It was calm, analytical, and utterly implacable. This was not a victim. This was a CEO. This was the woman who now owned their entire world. "Good morning, Seraphina," Onyx said. Her voice was the same as it had been at the gate, quiet, controlled, but in the context of this meeting, it carried the weight of absolute authority. Every person on the call leaned closer to their screen. "I am Dr. Seraphina Onyx. As of yesterday, my firm is the sole proprietor of Stellara Air. I had intended for a smoother transition, but an incident occurred which requires my immediate and full attention. It is an incident that I believe serves as a perfect microcosm for the systemic rot that has brought this once great airline to the brink of collapse. She paused, her eyes scanning the grid of faces. She let the weight of her words sink in. Yesterday, I attempted to fly on one of our aircraft. Flight 718 from Atlanta to San Francisco. I was traveling in economy class under my own name. I was not in disguise. I was simply a passenger. What I experienced was not a simple customer service failure. It was a complete breakdown of professional integrity, human decency, and operational security. Her gaze settled on the two small boxes at the bottom of the screen. Howard Fine looked like he was about to faint. Brenda Scanlon stared at her own hands, unable to meet the CEO's eyes. "Mr. Fine, Seraphina," said her tone sharp as glass. "As the station manager, you are responsible for the culture and conduct of your employees. Tell me, what is your protocol for a gate agent who without any valid reason decides to publicly harass a passenger?" Howard swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Ms. Onyx, we have extensive training, a code of conduct." "Do you?" Seraphina interrupted, her voice dangerously soft. "Because what I saw was not training. It was a blood sport. Your lead agent, Miss Scanlon, used her uniform as a shield to bully and humiliate a paying customer." She finally addressed Brenda directly. "Miss Scanlon, please look at the camera." Slowly, as if it were physically painful, Brenda raised her head. Her face was a wreck of ruined makeup and sleepless dread. "Miss Scanlon." Seraphina continued, "You accused me of using a fraudulent ticket." "On what grounds?" Brenda's voice was a choked whisper. The last-minute purchase. The debit card. You looked." "I looked what Miss Scanlon," Seraphina pressed. "Tell the board." "What was it about my appearance that triggered your security concerns?" Brenda couldn't answer. The truth was too ugly to say aloud in this forum. "You were a black woman in a hoodie, and you didn't look like you belonged. You didn't have grounds," Seraphina said, answering her own question. "You had a prejudice. You chose to wield the authority of this company as a weapon to enforce your own personal biases. You then escalated the situation. You lied about the legality of being recorded. You involved law enforcement under false pretenses, and then in a final stunning act of unprofessionalism, you tore up my boarding pass." She let a beat of silence pass. That singular act, Ms. Scanlon, was not just an attack on a passenger. It was an attack on this company. Every ticket is a contract, a promise. You didn't just tear up a piece of paper. You tore up a contract. You tore up our revenue. You tore up our reputation. You tore up the very trust that is the only real asset an airline has. She zoomed out, addressing the entire board again. This is not about one bad employee. This is about a culture that allows a Brenda Scanlon to feel so empowered in her bitterness that she can do what she did without fear of repercussion. It's about a system where a junior agent who I could see was uncomfortable with the situation felt too intimidated to intervene. It's a symptom of a disease of apathy that starts at the top and trickles all the way down to the gate. Richard Sterling, looking 10 years older than he had on the golf course, finally spoke. "Ms. Onyx, on behalf of the company, I am profoundly sorry. This employee's actions are inexcusable. Her employment and that of her manager will be terminated immediately." He looked at Brenda and Howard with a grim finality. It was the expected corporate response. A swift, clean amputation. But Seraphina shook her head. No. The single word stunned the entire meeting into silence. Brenda looked up, a flicker of insane hope in her eyes. No, Seraphina repeated. Termination is an ending. I am not interested in endings. I am interested in beginnings. Mr. Fine, your failure was one of leadership. You will not be terminated. You will be demoted. You are being reassigned to our facility in Sioux Falls, where you will undergo a mandatory year-long management and sensitivity retraining program. You will learn how to lead, or you will be gone. Howard Fine simply nodded, a look of numb relief on his face. He had a job. It was a humiliating demotion, but it wasn't the end. Miss Scanlon Seraphina said, her eyes locking onto Brenda's. For you, the situation is different. You are not a leader. You are an infection, and you cannot be retrained. You represent a liability this company can no longer afford. Your employment with Stellara Air is terminated effective this second. The flicker of hope in Brenda's eyes died, replaced by the flat, dull look of absolute ruin. But that is not the end of it, Seraphina continued, and now a new, colder edge entered her voice. You did not merely violate company policy. You made false statements to law enforcement. You committed an act of public defamation. You willfully destroyed my property, the ticket for which I paid. My legal team, the same team that just acquired this company for $6.8 billion, will be filing a civil suit against you for damages. Every dollar we win from you will be placed into a new fund. She looked at the entire board. I am announcing the creation of the Stellara Cares Fund. It will be an employee-run grant program to provide emergency financial assistance to our ground staff, flight attendants, and other frontline workers. The people who actually make this airline run. Its seed money will come from Ms. Scanlon's personal assets. A collective gasp went through the video conference. This wasn't just a firing. This was an execution. A public, financial, and professional annihilation. Furthermore, Seraphina said the video of the incident, which was recorded by another passenger, has been sent to me. We will not be burying it. We will be using it. It will become the centerpiece of a new mandatory training module for every single employee of this company, from the boardroom to the baggage claim. It will be called the E14 Protocol, and it will be a permanent reminder of what happens when we fail our customers and ourselves. She was turning Brenda's moment of greatest pride into her eternal legacy of shame. This is the new Stellara Air. Seraphina concluded, her voice ringing with unwavering resolve. We will be a company built on a foundation of respect. Respect for our customers, respect for our colleagues, and respect for the contract we make with every single person who chooses to fly with us. We will root out the apathy, the prejudice, and the bitterness. We will invest in our people. We will upgrade our systems. We will become the airline of choice, not by default, but by design. This is day one. The work starts now. Are there any questions? There were none. The silence was absolute. In the small box at the bottom of the screen, Brenda Scanlon had slumped forward, her face in her hands, her body shaking with silent, racking sobs. Her life as she knew it was over, dismantled piece by piece in a 20-minute video call by the quiet woman in the grey hoodie she had tried to destroy. Karma, Seraphina thought, wasn't a mystical force. It was simply a system rebalancing itself sometimes with the quiet efficiency of an algorithm, and other times with the devastating precision of a corporate execution. The fallout from the 8 a.m. meeting was not a ripple, it was a tsunami. Within an hour, the story confirmed by an official press release from Nexus Innovations was the #1 headline on every major news network. Billionaire tech mogul Seraphina Onyx acquires Stellara Air, fires gate agent after being humiliated on her own airline. The passenger's video, which his lawyer had wisely licensed to a news agency, went hyper-viral. Suddenly, Brenda Scanlon wasn't just an unemployed gate agent. She was the face of corporate arrogance and prejudice, her sneering visage and cruel words dissected on 24-hour news cycles and a million social media feeds. The civil lawsuit was filed that same afternoon. Faced with the mountain of evidence and the legal firepower of Nexus, Brenda's assets were frozen. Her house, her car, her pension. Everything was targeted to seed the Stellara Cares Fund. She became a pariah, a modern-day cautionary tale. But Seraphina Onyx was not focused on the past. The public shaming of Brenda Scanlon was a necessary but minor part of her strategy. Her true focus was on the monumental task of rebuilding a broken empire from the inside out. Her first move was to find the other players from that day at Gate E14. She located the young nervous agent Chloe. Seraphina summoned her not to a boardroom, but to a quiet coffee shop near the airport. Chloe arrived looking terrified, expecting to be fired as an accomplice. Instead, Seraphina slid a folder across the table. "Chloe," she said warmly, "I watched you during the incident. I saw your discomfort. I saw you try to de-escalate. You were intimidated, and our corporate culture failed to give you the tools or the confidence to intervene effectively. That's our failure, not yours." Chloe, stunned, could only nod. "Inside this folder," Seraphina continued, "is a promotion. You're being moved to our Central Training Division in Dallas. I'm also creating a new position, an anonymous employee advocate role. A direct line for any employee to report misconduct or pressure from a superior without fear of retaliation. I want you to help me design it. I want people like you, people with a conscience to build our new foundation." Tears welled in Chloe's eyes as she opened the folder. It wasn't just a promotion. It was an affirmation. Next, Seraphina tracked down Marcus Thorne, the young man who had filmed the video. He was a freelance journalist, and he was shocked to receive a personal call from the CEO's office. He expected a lawsuit or a cease and desist. Instead, Seraphina offered him a contract. "I want you to produce a series of short documentaries," she explained over the phone. "I want you to have unfettered access to our airline for the next year. I want you to tell the real stories, the struggles of our baggage handlers, the dedication of our mechanics, the challenges our flight attendants face. I want you to show the public the truth of our journey to become better. No PR spin, just the unvarnished truth." She was turning a potential adversary into a partner embracing transparency as a core tenet of her new company. The changes within Stellara Air were swift and seismic. The E14 protocol was rolled out with Brenda's face and Seraphina's calm, composed one as the two opposing forces in the training video. It was uncomfortable and raw, and it was the most effective training module the company had ever had. Seraphina invested billions, not just in new fuel-efficient planes, but in people. She raised the base pay for all frontline workers by 20%. She poured money into overhauling the ancient buggy scheduling and booking software, commissioning a new system based on the elegant, user-focused principles she'd pioneered in her own tech companies. The Stellara Cares Fund, seeded by Brenda's assets, and massively augmented by Nexus, began distributing grants within a month, helping an employee in Denver pay for a child's emergency surgery and a flight attendant in Newark avoid eviction. The culture began to shift. Morale once at rock bottom began a slow, cautious climb. Employees started to believe that the new owner actually saw them, that she cared not just about profit margins, but about their dignity. 6 months after the incident, Seraphina Onyx once again found herself at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. This time, she wasn't anonymous. As she walked through the concourse, agents at the check-in counters recognized her. They didn't see a terrifying CEO. They saw the woman who had given them a raise and a voice. They smiled. They nodded with respect. She walked to the newly renovated Gate E14. The podium was gone, replaced with a more open, welcoming circular desk designed to reduce the us versus them barrier. The lead agent was a man she had personally promoted, someone known for his calm demeanor and problem-solving skills. The branding on the walls was new, a sleeker, more modern Stellara Air logo, with the new tagline underneath, "Every journey matters." She was flying to San Francisco again. This time she had booked a seat in first class. Not for the luxury, but as an inspection. As she presented her boarding pass, the gate agent's eyes lit up with genuine recognition. "Dr. Onyx, it is an honor to have you on board," he said with a warm, authentic smile. "Welcome to Stellara Air." There was no fawning, no fear, just a simple, profound respect. It was the same respect he showed the family with 2 crying babies behind her, and the college student flying on a budget after that. As she settled into her spacious seat, a flight attendant approached her. "Dr. Onyx, can I get you anything before we take off?" "Just some water, thank you," Seraphina said. "And please tell your entire crew that I appreciate the work they do." The flight attendant beamed. "We appreciate you, ma'am. Things are different now. Better." As the plane ascended, banking over the vast expanse of Atlanta, Seraphina looked out of the window. She thought of Brenda Scanlon, a woman now living in obscurity, her name a synonym for disgrace. She felt no lingering anger, only a quiet melancholy for the waste of it all. Brenda's bitterness had cost her everything, but in doing so, it had become the catalyst for a great renewal. The system had rebalanced, the rot had been excised, a new trajectory had been set. Seraphina Onyx took a sip of her water, the engines humming a steady, powerful tune. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, Stellara Air was flying in the right direction, and its leader, who understood the view from both the front and the back of the plane, was exactly where she needed to be at the controls. While Stellara Air ascended, Brenda Scanlon descended. Her life after the video call was a free fall into a grey, featureless abyss. The notoriety was a prison. Her face, contorted in a sneer, was a meme, a gif, a shorthand for Karen. Walking down the street in her Atlanta suburb became an ordeal of hostile stares and muttered insults. The sale of her house was a public spectacle, with news vans parked outside as the contents were liquidated to satisfy the lawsuit. She ended up in a cramped 1-bedroom apartment in a town she didn't know the walls thin enough to hear her neighbors' arguments, their laughter, their lives. For months, her only companion was a venomous, curdling rage. It was a shield against the crushing weight of her reality. She would sit in the dark, the glow of the television flickering across her face, watching news reports about the miraculous turnaround of Stellara Air. She'd see Seraphina Onyx lauded in business magazines as a visionary, a compassionate capitalist. Each mention of the Stellara Cares Fund, Her money she'd hissed to the empty room was like a fresh twist of the knife. In her narrative, she was the victim, a hard-working woman crushed by a vindictive billionaire who had entrapped her. She had been made an example of a sacrifice on the altar of public relations. This story protected her from the far more terrible truth. She tried to find work, but the moment a prospective employer Googled her name, the interview was over. The polite, swift rejection was always the same. Brenda Scanlon was unemployable, a toxic asset. The rage began to fray, replaced by the cold, creeping tendrils of despair. The savings she had hidden away dwindled. The silence in the apartment grew heavier. One Tuesday afternoon, a bundle of mail arrived. Among the final notice bills and junk mail was a crisp envelope bearing the new Stellara Air logo. Her first instinct was to tear it to shreds. She imagined it was some final legal insult. But curiosity, a long-dormant emotion, won out. She opened it. It was a standard form letter about her terminated pension plan, dry and bureaucratic. But tucked inside was a smaller, personal-sized envelope with her name written on it in careful, looping handwriting. She didn't recognize it. With trembling fingers, she opened it. The note inside was brief. Dear Brenda, I don't know if you'll even get him this. I'm not sure why I'm writing it. I know you probably hate me and everyone at Stellara, but I wanted you to know that I was promoted. I'm in Dallas now helping design a new employee support program. I think about that day at E14 a lot. I was scared of you, but I was also scared for you. I'm not writing to say I forgive you. That's not my place. But I wanted to tell you something. Last week, the Stellara Cares Fund paid to rebuild the home of a baggage handler in Phoenix, whose house burned down in an electrical fire. He has 3 kids. They would have been homeless. I know where that money came from. I guess I just wanted you to know that too. I hope you find your way. Sincerely, Chloe Martin. Brenda read the note once, then twice. It wasn't a letter of pity or condemnation. It was a letter of fact. A simple, devastating statement of cause and effect. This small act of kindness, this unsolicited message from the quiet girl she had bullied and terrorized, did what the billion-dollar lawsuit and global humiliation could not. It punched a hole clean through her shield of rage. The story she had told herself, that of the righteous victim, crumbled into dust. She wasn't the victim. She was the woman who had tried to ruin Seraphina Onyx. She was the woman who had terrorized Chloe Martin. She was the person whose bitterness and hate, through some cosmic irony she couldn't begin to process, had ended up saving a family from homelessness. The rage did not return. Instead, a vast, hollow emptiness opened up inside her. The silence in the apartment was no longer just an absence of noise. It was the sound of her own soul stripped bare. For the first time, with no one to blame but the stranger in the mirror, Brenda Scanlon sat in the quiet of her ruined life and wept. The tears were not of anger or self-pity. They were tears of recognition. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't forgiveness. It was the first agonizing step onto a long, desolate road, the beginning of a journey she would have to make entirely on her own. That's the incredible story of how one woman's quiet dignity and immense power completely transformed a dying company. It's a powerful reminder that the person you might dismiss today could be the one who signs your paycheck tomorrow. The story of Dr. Seraphina Onyx and Brenda Scanlon teaches us that true authority isn't about the uniform you wear or the title on your name tag. It's about the respect you give. Karma came for Brenda, not as a bolt of lightning, but as a systematic dismantling of a life built on prejudice, leaving her with the most difficult consequence of all, the unavoidable truth of her own actions. If this story resonated with you, and if you believe in the power of respect and accountability, please hit that like button to let us know. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. We share powerful real-life dramas like this every week, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. What did you think of Brenda's ultimate fate? Let us know in the comments below.